when you're making certain upgrades, especially if you already have it in your mind that you're thinking about upgrading, you're thinking about selling your home. If you're going to do these upgrades, try to do them as early as you can so that you can get years of enjoyment out of it. And then eventually. Hey, how's it going? Thank you for joining me on this week's episode of The Real Deal. This week, we're going to be talking about what dictates your market value, the property value that your house has. There's a lot of different external factors that are going to affect your property values, and there's also going to be some things that you can do to try to control your property values. First, let's talk about some of the external factors, right? So what really dictates how the market is moving in certain areas. And that's a concept that a lot of times clients don't understand, right? So whenever somebody thinks about buying a house, maybe sometimes they associate that with their biggest purchase that they've had to date, which is buying a car. When you're buying a car, I mean, you can offer somebody a price, if it's been on Craigslist for some time or whatnot. And there really is no real way to determine actual market value. Now, there is Kelley Blue Book, which does a decent job at trying to predict that, right? But at the end of the day, when you're buying a house, it's definitely a lot more involved. So let me give you a situation. Let me give you a scenario. Let's say you live in a neighborhood, right? And let's say it's 100 homes in this neighborhood. And of those homes, you have maybe 50 that resemble your home. And of those 50, maybe I would say 25 of them are closer in square footage. When an appraiser goes to determine the value of your house, that is going to be the number one factor that's going to determine the actual value of your home, which is the square footage. Right now, let's say that your neighbor sells a house, and it's apples to apples, just to make this simple. And your neighbor sells for, let's say, $450,000. Now, it was listed for $430,000, but somebody came in and was willing to pay $20,000 above market value for your home. Now, effectively, what that's doing is that's raising the property values in your neighborhood. The next person that sells in that same neighborhood they're not gonna be able to price it right at $450, but maybe instead of it being listed at $430, maybe they list at $435, maybe $440, and maybe that one does close at $455. And slowly, progressively, this is going to increase the property values in your neighborhood. Now, in a regular market, I would say that normal appreciation is about 3 to 5% per year. In our current market conditions that we're in, we saw a very large appreciation of homes. Just in 6 months, there was like a 20% appreciation. So there was a lot of competition, and there was a lot of buyers that were making very aggressive offers to get their offers accepted. And effectively, that was causing the prices of homes to go up. Now, these are conditions that you really can't control as a homeowner. There's nothing that you can do about that, right? Now, while we're on that subject on how property values go up, let's talk about how they go down. They go down in the exact same way, right? So a lot of people, they talk about how, the market crashed in 2008 and how that process unfolded. I want you to understand that didn't happen overnight. Even then, when that market crashed in 2008, it was a relatively slow process. The same way that prices of houses go up is the same way they go down. Just because something happens in a particular market doesn't mean that home prices just get slashed, that the market value of that home is no longer the case. Your market value is determined by what a buyer is willing to pay for that home. So when houses, start to sell less often, when there's a lot more inventory and less buyers, what happens is homes will then stay on the market longer. And when homes stay on the market a little bit longer, eventually there might be a price adjustment that's required to get the home sold. And then that starts that reverse of market appreciation. Then your property values start to slightly decrease. But at the end of the day, that's something that happens throughout the market, throughout different neighborhoods, right? There's certain things that you can't, let's say your neighbor has a home that needs a ton of work and maybe, it was a tenant occupied home and they left it and they sold it to an investor. Those aren't going to sell as high, right? As opposed to a home that is upgraded. So just because a home in your neighborhood sold for higher or for less than what your home is going to get listed for, I mean, that doesn't mean that that's where your home is going to be priced. There's certain adjustments that we will do based on the condition of your home. Another thing that will determine the external factors of your market price is going to be, for example, interest rates. Now, what I mean by that is kind of thinking about what we were talking about earlier as far as, when you sell a house for a higher price, it goes up. There's going to be a certain point where interest rates will get too high to support a particular price point in a particular neighborhood, right? So when a house ends up being too expensive and rates go up, right, a rate from 3% to 4% can be the difference of $250, $300 a month. We've been very fortunate these last couple of years where interest rates have stayed historically low, especially this year. I mean, they're extremely low. Historically speaking, you can still buy a house right now with a 2.6, 2.75% interest rate with premium credit. So when interest rates get to a point where they're too high and the market doesn't support in a very slow moving process, there is definitely some potential where the prices can slowly trickle down. But I just want to emphasize on how slow that process truly is. The same way that they appreciate and value homes can depreciate in value at that same rate of 3 to 5%. Now, what are some things that you can do to control your property value? Of course, doing upgrades on the home, that's going to increase the value of your home. Now, it's rare for you to be able to, increase the value of your home on a one-to-one, right? So let's say you invest $50,000 and you get $50,000 right back. For the most part, you're actually going to lose money if you're paying contractors to do the work. Now, if you're a tile installer or if you install granite, then great. You're obviously going to be able to get everything a lot more affordable, but the majority of the population is contracting somebody else to do that work, right? Now, it's rare, like I said, where you can increase the value of your home that rapidly by upgrading it by paying market value or market prices for those upgrades. But what you will get is you'll get years of enjoyment out of it, right? So if you put a pool in the backyard, that's a great example. Let's say it costs you $50,000 to put a pool in your backyard. That doesn't mean that you're going to be able to sell that house $50,000 higher than your neighbor with the exact same house and the same exact upgrades. You might be able to sell that for $25,000 higher. But you're going to get years of enjoyment. So that's one of those things that you want to be very conscious. If you've been thinking about selling your house, reach out to me so that we can have a conversation about what are some upgrades that will make sense, that will make your house more marketable. So that way you're not just throwing money away, upgrading your house on something that you're not going to get any real concrete value for. Now, there is an issue sometimes where clients tend to over upgrade homes. Now, if you're somebody that works in the industry, I have a great example. I have clients that I was shopping with just the other day, and we went and saw this house in a nice neighborhood. It was a nice North Peoria neighborhood. However, they probably had $200,000, maybe $150,000 in their backyard, market value, right? So if somebody were to take that yard and take it to a landscaper, pool designer, there's probably $200,000 in upgrades. It was insane. I mean, the pool was beautiful. It had, all these lighting and the step ups, and it had, like a gazebo, built-in barbecue. It had a lot of money invested. Now, in that particular neighborhood, they over upgraded that home. If somebody actually paid for that, if somebody hired a company to do that, they're losing a lot of money. I think in that case, probably the homeowner more than likely worked in that particular industry to invest that type of money for that house at that price point. But that's not always the case. I have seen homeowners upgrade their homes too much for the neighborhood, and they try to overprice it, and you're not going to get that money back. So you want to be very careful when you're making certain upgrades, especially if you already have it in your mind that you're thinking about upgrading, you're thinking about selling your home. If you're going to do these upgrades, try to do them as early as you can so that you can get years of enjoyment out of it. And then eventually you'll be able to sell the house for a higher profit than your neighbors, but you won't be losing money. You won't feel like you're losing that money because you got years of enjoyment out of it. So hopefully this helps you understand a little bit more on how market values work, on external factors that determine the value of your home, and things that you can do to help impact the value of your home. If you've been thinking about upgrading your home, or if you've been thinking about selling, of course, reach out to me so we can have that conversation to find a good balance of certain things that you can do to make your home more marketable. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you much, and take care.